Listen, if you've spent the entire season nurturing your container gardens only to watch them struggle or completely disappear when winter arrives, you're not alone. But here's the thing. Most gardeners believe it's the freezing temperatures that kill their potted plants. They're wrong. The real culprit? It's the endless cycle of freezing, thawing, and drying out that happens again and again throughout winter. And if you don't take action right now, your beautiful potted perennials will end up as mushy roots come springtime. I'm Sam from Seniors Gardening Advice, where we believe that growing smarter saves you time, money, and heartache. Today, I'm going to share 7 powerful strategies that will transform the way you protect your container plants through the cold months. These aren't complicated tricks. They're tested, simple methods that work. If you're ready to finally keep your potted perennials alive and thriving through winter, stick around because this video is for you. If you love gardening, live in a climate with real winters, or just want to stop wasting money on plants that don't survive the season, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. We share practical gardening wisdom every single week that helps you grow better with less effort. And please, drop a comment below telling me which tip helped you the most. I read every single one and would love to hear from our growing community. Now let's get straight into saving your plants.
Tip number 1. Lift your pots off the ground. This is the most important step, and honestly, it's the one most gardeners completely overlook. Here's what happens. When winter arrives, your concrete patio, wooden deck, and stone surfaces transform into cold traps. These hard materials don't just sit there. They actively pull heat away from your plant pots much faster than the air around them does. Think about it this way. Your pots are sitting directly on this freezing surface, and the cold moves upward, slowly freezing your plant's roots from the bottom up. It's like your roots are sitting in a freezer box, and the damage happens gradually without you even realizing it. But the solution? It's incredibly simple. Elevate your pots. Get them off the ground entirely. Research shows that this single action, just lifting your containers off the ground, can increase your root survival rate by more than 60%. This is especially true if you're gardening in zones 4 through 7, where temperatures regularly drop below freezing and stay there for extended periods. You don't need expensive equipment for this. Use whatever you have available. Pot feet. These are small rubber or ceramic risers designed specifically for this purpose. They sit directly under your pots and do the job beautifully. Wooden planks. 2 sturdy 2x4s or thick wooden slats can lift an entire row of containers at once. Bricks. Simply place 2 bricks under each side of your pot. It's old school and effective. Wooden crates. Turn and hold crate upside down and rest your pots on top. One important warning. Never use metal stands. Metal conducts cold extremely well and can actually make your problem worse by transferring more cold to your containers. Now, about your pots themselves. If you're using plastic containers, you're already ahead of the game because plastic insulates better than other materials. But if you love decorative, ceramic, or terracotta pots, especially the unglazed varieties, here's what you need to know. These porous materials absorb water. When that absorbed water freezes inside the pot walls, it expands. That expansion cracks your pot from the inside out, which simultaneously damages your plant's roots. This is particularly risky in zones 3 through 6, where you get brutal freeze-thaw cycles. One day it's 20 degrees, the next it's 40 degrees. That constant cycling between freezing and warming, that's what kills roots in containers more than anything else. Even if you absolutely love your terracotta pots and don't want to move your plants, there is a solution. Wrap the pot in burlap or frost cloth and then elevate it. This double protection reduces both the downward cold coming from the ground and the moisture exposure from the air. Here's something most gardeners never consider. When your pot sits directly on a frozen surface and then warms slightly during the day, water actually starts draining from your soil. But when night falls and everything refreezes again, that water freezes again. This expanding ice puts serious pressure on your roots, compacts your soil, and starts damaging your plant from the inside. Over time, this creates root rot or worse, total plant death by spring. Remember this, even a 1-inch lift can change the entire outcome for your plants. We're not trying to create a greenhouse here. We're simply trying to create enough of a buffer to keep the roots stable, prevent soil flooding, and stop your pot from becoming a frozen solid box.
Tip number 2, wrap your pots with proper insulation. Now that your pots are elevated and out of that cold trap, the next critical step is wrapping them with insulation. Here's where most gardeners make their biggest mistake. They throw some mulch on top of the soil and call it done. But that approach completely misses the real problem. Mulch on top doesn't protect the sides of your container. And in freezing weather, that's exactly where the damage starts. Think about it. Roots growing in the ground are surrounded by earth on all sides, so temperature stays relatively steady. But roots in containers, they have nothing but cold air hitting them from every direction. That cold air attacks all 4 sides of the pot and sucks heat out incredibly fast. Your roots are literally exposed to freezing temperatures from multiple directions at once. So here's what you actually need to do. Wrap your pots like you're preparing them for winter survival, because you are. Here are your insulation options. Burlap. This is a gardener's best friend. It's breathable, natural, durable, and holds up beautifully through cold months. Frost cloth. Excellent choice, especially if you already use it for your raised beds or row covers. Old blankets or moving blankets. These work perfectly if you're in a pinch or on a budget. Bubble wrap. Keep those boxes from your online shopping orders. The bubble wrap inside is fantastic insulation. Towels. Old towels can work for shorter periods, but be careful because they can trap moisture and become too heavy. Here's exactly how to wrap your pots correctly. First, make sure the outside of your pot is completely dry. Second, wrap the entire pot tightly, covering all 4 sides, but leave the drainage hole open at the bottom. Third, secure everything with twine, string, or even duct tape if necessary. The key is preventing water from getting trapped inside the insulation, because wet material will freeze solid and create the opposite effect of what you want. Your goal is simple. Trap the heat that's already in the soil and protect those roots from sudden temperature swings. We're not wrapping the top of the plant. We don't cover the foliage. We're protecting the root zone, which is the part that actually matters for survival. If you live in zone 5 or colder, double up your insulation layers. In those areas, even tough perennials like hostas or lavender can seriously suffer when they're in containers. If you're in warmer zones 7 through 9, 1 layer of wrapping is usually sufficient, especially if your winter is mild. But don't skip this step even in warm zones. Even light frost can cause hidden damage over time, especially during sudden unexpected cold snaps. Here's a professional trick. Add a layer of dry leaves or pine needles between your pot and wrap. This boosts insulation even further. Just make sure everything stays dry because moisture will freeze and cause more harm than good. Some dedicated gardeners in extremely cold climates like Michigan, Minnesota, and southern Ontario go as far as placing their pots inside storage bins lined with straw. It sounds extreme, but when temperatures drop to -10 degrees, that might be the only thing standing between your plant and total loss. One viewer from Alberta told me they lost 5 out of 7 potted perennials one winter because they skipped the wrapping step completely. But the next year, after wrapping their pots with frost cloth and adding a layer of straw, they kept every single plant alive, even in -5-degree temperatures. That's a win worth celebrating. Should you wrap plastic pots too? Yes, absolutely. While plastic holds heat a bit better than clay, if your container is smaller than 12 inches wide, it cools down quickly. The smaller the pot, the more important insulation becomes. Small pots act like ice cube trays. If you've got compact pots with plants like lavender, thyme, coral bells, or daylilies, those definitely need wrapping. One mistake to avoid: don't push your pots against the wall and wrap them so tightly there's no air movement. You want air to circulate around the insulation. If there's no airflow and the wrap traps moisture, you can encourage mold or mildew to grow right on your container. The simple rule is, insulate without suffocating.
Tip number 3. Group your pots together for shared protection. There's one more layer of protection that makes a tremendous difference, especially when temperatures drop fast and wind picks up. It's called clustering, and commercial growers have used this method successfully for decades. A single pot sitting out in the open is exposed on every side. Cold wind blasts it from every direction, drawing out warmth faster than almost anything else. Even with wrapping, that bit of wind will find its way in and drain precious heat. But when you group your pots together, side by side, something remarkable happens. They protect each other. It's basically a huddle. Plants sharing warmth, shielding one another from harsh winds, and creating a more stable mini-climate right there in your yard. Commercial outdoor nurseries from Ohio to Oregon use this exact method during winter. They don't leave pots spread out individually, they cluster them, wrap them, and position them close to wind-blocking structures, and their survival rates go way up. Here's how you can do this in your own backyard. Start by moving your potted perennials close to a wall. A brick wall, wood fence, or shed works wonderfully. Even the side of your house is perfect. Here's why walls are so valuable. They absorb heat during the day and slowly release it at night, raising the ambient temperature by a few degrees. And in winter, those few degrees can mean the difference between a sleeping plant and a dead one. If you live in zones 4, 5, or 6, where icy winds roll in regularly, positioning your pots near walls is absolutely essential. But even if you're in zone 7 or 8, where winters are generally milder, a sudden cold snap can still cause serious damage, especially to container plants without soil insulation around them. Once your pots are positioned near a wall or sheltered spot, push them tightly together. Arrange tall pots in the back and shorter ones in front. This arrangement not only helps with wind protection, but also prevents them from toppling over in strong gusts. You can also use natural windbreaks like straw bales or evergreen branches. If you trimmed your arborvitae, spruce, or pine trees recently, don't throw away those branches. Lay them around the base of your clustered pots. They'll act like a natural barrier, reducing wind flow and holding in warmth. Here's something most gardeners never think to do. Use old tomato cages or plant supports to create a circular fence around your cluster. Then fill the space inside with dry leaves or straw. This creates an insulated little pod where your pots stay warmer and wind can't whip through as easily. A grower I know in upstate New York uses this exact setup. He's successfully overwintered rosemary, salvia, and even small hydrangeas in pots outdoors using this clustering method. What if you don't have space near a wall? No problem. You can still cluster your pots together in the middle of your patio or yard. Just surround the cluster with something: an old pallet, straw bales, unused bags of potting mix, or mulch you haven't used yet. Use whatever you have available to create a ring around the group and block the wind. Think of it like building a tiny village for your plants. Each pot is a house, and the cluster is the community. The stronger the community, the warmer it stays through winter.
Tip number 4. Understand water as a winter protector. This tip surprises a lot of gardeners. Most people assume watering before a freeze is the last thing you want to do. But the reality is quite different. It could actually save your plants, especially the roots in containers. Let me explain the science. When soil is dry going into a cold snap, it cools down faster. Dry soil has lots of air pockets, and air pockets don't hold heat well. But when soil is slightly moist, not soggy, just damped, it holds on to warmth longer and slows down the freezing process. It's like the difference between a dry sponge and a wet sponge. A damp sponge takes longer to freeze than a dry one. Your potting mix operates exactly the same way. Here's what you need to do. Keep a close eye on the weather forecast. When you see temperatures are going to drop below freezing in the next 24 to 48 hours, give your potted perennials a deep watering. Do this early in the day, not late at night, not late afternoon. Early morning is best because it gives any excess water time to drain out and prevents soggy conditions overnight that could turn to ice and damage roots. This approach is especially important in zones 4 through 7, where sharp cold fronts can come on fast and catch gardeners off guard. But even if you're in zones 8 or 9 and you're growing something borderline hardy like rosemary or lemon balm, it still matters tremendously. Let me be clear. I'm not saying you need to water your potted plants every time it gets chilly. What I'm saying is, don't let the soil stay bone dry when a hard freeze is coming. Moist soil is genuinely your friend in winter preparation. Here's a mistake people often make. They stop watering entirely once temperatures drop and fall. They figure the plant isn't growing, so it doesn't need water. But here's the truth. Even dormant roots need a little moisture to stay alive. If soil dries out completely and then freezes solid, you'll often find root death by early spring, even if the top of the plant looks fine. I've seen this happen repeatedly, especially with plants like Heuchera, Coreopsis, and Salvia in containers. They look like they're simply sleeping. Then spring comes and nothing returns. It's heartbreaking. Here's a quick checklist for watering before the winter. Water when a freeze is expected in the next 1 to 2 days. Do it in the morning, not late in the day. Make sure pots drain well. Never let pots sit in standing water. Only water if soil is dry or almost dry. Don't soak already wet pots. Let's also talk about soil quality because it matters. If your potting mix is old, compacted, or holds too much water, it could freeze into a solid block. That puts dangerous pressure on roots and damages cell walls, especially in young and tender perennials. This might be the perfect time, before winter really sets in, to top dress your pots with fresh compost or worm castings. This accomplishes 2 important things. First, it helps soil retain moisture without becoming waterlogged. Second, it slowly feeds your plant over the winter months, especially on those milder days when soil temperatures creep above freezing. Gardeners in Kentucky, West Virginia, and throughout the Midwest swear by this method. A light compost layer in late fall has helped them bring back plants year after year, even after deep freezes. Here's a bonus move. Add a 1-inch layer of pine bark, shredded leaves, or pine cones on top of your potting soil. It acts like a natural blanket, keeping moisture in and reducing temperature swings. Just remember to remove it once spring temperatures stay consistently above 45 degrees at night so you don't accidentally smother your new growth. Most gardeners lose their potted perennials in winter because they either let the soil dry out too long or let it get soggy and freeze solid, suffocating roots. Both situations are completely avoidable. All it takes is checking your pots every 10 to 14 days in late fall and early winter. Stick your finger in the soil. If it feels dry 2 inches down, give it a little water. That one simple habit could be the reason your perennials come back stronger next year.
Tip number 5. Protect the pot itself. You've raised your pots off the ground. You've wrapped them carefully. You've clustered them together in a safe spot. You've even watered them at the right time. But here's a critical question. What if your pot doesn't survive the winter? This is something most people completely overlook. Sometimes it's not the plant that fails, it's the pot that gives out first. And when a pot cracks or splits, it exposes roots, destroys your insulation, and can wipe out everything you've worked for. Certain pot materials just aren't built for freezing conditions. At the very top of the risky list, terracotta and unglazed ceramic. These materials absorb water. That water gets into the walls of the pot itself, and when temperatures drop below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, that water freezes, expands, and boom, your pot splits down the side. Even a small crack becomes a big problem because the moment that crack opens, cold air floods into the root zone. Soil starts spilling out, and by the time spring rolls around, your perennial is either dried out, exposed, or completely dead. Here's what to do about it. If you live in zones 3 through 7 where hard freezes are common, consider switching to frost-resistant containers. These include thick plastic pots, fiberglass planters, resin or composite pots, and double-walled containers. These materials hold up beautifully under pressure. They don't absorb moisture, and they don't crack easily when freeze-thaw cycles hit hard. But if you absolutely love your terracotta pots and don't want to move the plants, you can protect the pot itself. Here's how.
First, wrap the pot all the way down to the base. Don't stop at just the root zone. That outer shell needs insulation too. Use burlap, old blankets, closed-cell insulation if you have it, or even a layer of cardboard wrapped in plastic to keep it dry. Second, keep the pot dry. Terracotta only cracks when moisture inside the pot wall freezes, so the drier you keep it, especially during sudden cold snaps, the safer it'll be. A gardener from Colorado Springs shared this tip. She places her terracotta pots under a covered patio, wraps them, and adds a piece of plastic sheeting underneath to keep them off wet concrete. She hasn't lost a single container in 5 years, despite regular freezes in the teens. Now let's talk about plastic pots. While plastic handles cold better than clay, it has its own challenge: brittleness. In freezing temperatures, especially after years of sun exposure, plastic pots can get stiff and crack from even small bumps or shifts. If your pots are more than 3 to 4 years old, inspect them carefully before winter. Look for thin walls, brittle edges, or stress lines. If they feel stiff or start to flake when you bend the rim, it's time to replace them or double insulate them. Here's a trick that works great. Place a smaller plastic pot inside a larger one and fill the gap between them with dry leaves, straw, or even shredded newspaper. That double-walled system adds a huge layer of insulation, protects both the pot and the plant, and costs you nothing. What about ceramic pots? They're beautiful, no doubt about that. But even glazed ceramics can crack in cold climates, especially if the glaze has hairline fractures or isn't designed for outdoor winter use. If you're in Zone 6 or colder, I recommend moving glazed ceramic pots into a garage, shed, or even an unheated sunroom if possible. If not, wrap them tightly and don't let them sit in standing water, because that's what causes the most damage. Finally, let's talk about drainage, because it matters more in winter than in summer. If your pot doesn't drain well, water pools in the bottom. That water freezes, expands, and not only cracks the pot, but also creates ice blocks that choke your roots. Before the freeze hits, check every drainage hole. Make sure nothing is blocked. If water isn't running out freely, fix it. Add more gravel, tilt the pot slightly, or clear any debris stuck in the base. One small action now can prevent major loss later. Bottom line, protecting your pot is protecting your plant. Think of your pot like a winter jacket. It needs to be dry, layered, and built to handle cold. If it fails, everything inside is exposed.
Tip number 6. Find and use microclimates. When temperatures really drop and your pots are already lifted, wrapped, clustered, and protected, there's still one more thing that can tip the odds in your favor. It's finding a microclimate. What's a microclimate? It's a small, protected spot in your yard where conditions are just a little milder than the rest of your garden. It might be warmer, less windy, better drained, or just more stable overall. And that's exactly where your vulnerable pots should go. This doesn't mean you need to move all your pots indoors or build a greenhouse. You're simply looking for areas around your home or garden that naturally stay a bit warmer through winter. Think about the south-facing side of your house, a corner near your garage, under a covered patio, next to a fence that blocks the wind, or near your compost bin, which gives off a little heat. Even moving your pot 5 feet from one location to another can raise the average temperature by 3 to 5 degrees, and that can make a huge difference, especially in zones 5 through 7. One of the best microclimates is along the south-facing wall of a brick house. Bricks absorb heat during the day and slowly release it overnight. If you place your pots there, wrapped and grouped, you're giving them the best possible shot at surviving harsh winter nights. A gardener in southern Wisconsin had potted peonies and heucheras on the edge of her deck. She lost them 2 years in a row. But the third year, she did 2 things differently. She moved the pots just 6 feet closer to her basement wall, where the furnace vent kept the air just a little warmer, and she grouped them near her compost tumbler, which gave off steady heat. Every single plant survived. Let's talk about garages and sheds. If you have an unheated garage, this is a great option, especially for less hardy perennials like rosemary, agapanthus, or fuchsia in pots.
Just make sure they still get some light and airflow. And always check the temperature in that garage. You don't want it to drop below 20 degrees Fahrenheit inside. If it does, you might still need to wrap your pots inside the garage for extra insulation. Cold frames and covered porches can also become makeshift microclimates, especially if they're blocked from the wind. If you're in the Pacific Northwest, where temperatures tend to stay above 20 degrees but the air is damp, a microclimate also helps reduce moisture stress in root rot. The goal isn't just warmth, it's stability. Cold doesn't usually kill overnight. It's the stress of freezing, thawing, freezing again that does the damage. A stable, slightly warmer spot breaks that cycle and gives your plant the chance to rest through winter instead of fighting to survive every single night. If you're in zones 8 and 9 and your winters are mild, you still get occasional dips. Moving pots under a roof or closer to the house can prevent sudden cold shock, especially for borderline hardy perennials like geraniums or lemon verbena. If lifting your pots is difficult, no worries. You can still build a microclimate around them. Use straw bales, storage bins, or even old furniture cushions to block wind. Create a windbreak. Add a ground cover like a rug or cardboard sheet, and you'll raise the temperature just enough to keep those roots steady. Microclimates are your best friend in winter preparation. They cost nothing. They don't require electricity or grow lights, and once you learn how to find them, you can use them year after year.
Tip number 7. Prevent premature spring wake-up. This tip is sneaky because it doesn't happen during winter. It happens at the very end of winter, when the worst seems over, but the real risk is just beginning. It's called false spring. That one warm week in February, the sunny stretch in early March, temperatures rise into the 50s, maybe even the 60s. You get excited, the birds are chirping, and guess what? So do your plants. Your potted perennials start waking up. They push out tender new shoots, maybe even a flower bud or two. And then boom, another hard frost arrives. That tender new growth is gone, burned, damaged beyond repair. And that early wake-up drains precious energy your plant needs to survive the final stretch of cold. This happens all over the Midwest, Northeast, mountain regions, and even parts of the UK and Canada. Late frosts can show up as late as April, especially in zones 3 through 6. Here's what to do. As winter ends and you start seeing new growth on your potted plants, don't rush to unwrap them. Leave their insulation in place just a little longer, especially at night. You can loosen it during the day if things are warming up, but cover everything again in the evening until nighttime temperatures stay consistently above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. If your pot is unwrapped and a sudden cold snap comes in, use frost cloth, an old sheet, or even a cardboard box overnight to cover the top growth. If your plant does start waking up too early, resist the urge to fertilize. Feeding it during that time can push it to grow even more, which makes it more vulnerable to the next frost. Instead, focus on stability, not speed. Keep things slow and steady. Let the weather settle before encouraging new growth. This one small move, delaying the wake-up, gives your perennials a smoother, safer transition into spring. Bonus tip: refresh roots and soil before winter. Before you wrap everything up, literally and figuratively, take a minute to check the base of your plants. Tip the pot slightly and look for roots coming out of the drainage holes. If they're circling the bottom or packed in tight, it might be time to gently loosen them just a little. You don't need to repot completely. Just use your fingers to break up any heavy root-bound sections and top off the pot with fresh soil, compost, or worm castings. This gives your plant a better environment to rest in during winter. And when spring comes, it'll have room to stretch and grow again. Think of it like fluffing the pillow before your plant goes to sleep. It may be small, but it makes a big difference. If you've got bags of compost lying around, now is the time to use them. Just a thin layer across the top of each pot adds nutrients, improves moisture retention, and protects the surface from sudden freezes. Do this once before winter really sets in, and your plants will thank you come spring. Summary:
your complete winter protection checklist. Let's review what you've learned today. 7 essential tips plus 1 bonus tip to protect your potted perennials this winter. Tip 1. Lift your pots off the ground to stop cold from creeping in from below. Tip 2. Wrap them with insulation to hold warmth and block icy winds. Tip 3. Cluster and shelter them near walls or fences to create shared protection. Tip 4. Water before a freeze to stabilize soil temperature. Tip 5. Protect the pots themselves, especially terracotta and ceramic ones. Tip 6. Move them to a microclimate where conditions are milder. Tip 7. Delay early wake-ups to avoid frostburn and wasted energy. Bonus. Refresh the roots and soil before tucking them in for the season. Closing message. Listen, if you've ever lost a plant in winter and thought, "What did I do wrong?" These steps are your answer. This video wasn't just about keeping plants alive. It was about giving you control, confidence, and clarity in a season where a lot of gardeners feel completely lost. If you found this helpful and want more of this kind of practical, honest gardening advice delivered without fluff or hype, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on your bell notifications so you don't miss a single video, and please take a second to like this video and leave a comment below sharing which tip you're most excited to try. I genuinely read every comment and love hearing from our seniors gardening advice community. Join us every week for real tested gardening tips for every season, for every climate zone, and always delivered in a way that makes sense. Share this video with any gardener friends you know who struggle with winter protection. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and stick around because winter's just beginning and we've got so much more to grow together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe to Seniors Gardening Advice. Like, comment, share.